Growers can be poised for abundant crops only to find problems with a significant stress event. Fortunately, there are ways to help moving forward. We'll discuss them today on this, our Redox Grows Technical Podcast. I'm Jim Morris with Redox Bionutrients. Happy to be visiting with John Kelly, our corporate agronomist. John, thanks for your time.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
John, before we get into ways we can help stress issues, which are critical for agriculture, I'd like to talk with you about your time at Redox. You've been here since the seedling days of the company, and a lot has changed. So from when you started to where we are now, how would you describe the difference between the number of products and the scientific know-how that we have today?
Well, it's been a consistent learning curve. And I can tell you from the early days, Darren and I dropped our corporate positions, we dropped everything. And we were just very fortunate that our first technology worked and worked well. But it's been a steep learning curve ever since.
And now we have dozens of products. We have 2 PhDs on staff. How is your level of excitement about the difference that Redox can make for a variety of growers and circumstances that are out there?
Well, I've never been more enthusiastic. And I guess the comment I would make is where there's a motivation for change, where there's a motivation to improve or higher performance on crop performance, that's where the opportunity is for Redox, is to help identify what can be done to improve the bottom line.
That's phenomenal. I think a lot of the old school fertilizer approach is we've done it this way, my dad did it this way, my grandfather did it this way. We're going to keep going with that. If we need to, we'll just use more. And the science says something different now. So I'm happy that we're at the forefront of that. Your background, 2 degrees from BYU, including a degree in Spanish, which I think is really telling of agriculture and the commitment that people make. It is a bilingual industry and a lot of people speak fluently in 2 languages. So credit to you, credit to the growers that can see that. So let's talk about stress events. How critical are they for agriculture? And please define abiotic stress.
Abiotic stress includes the non-living factors that affect plant growth, plant performance, including some of the most common would be soil moisture extremes, too wet, too dry, heat stress, wind, precipitation, humidity, and so on. And abiotic stress has come to the forefront because research has indicated on quite a few commodity crops that about 70% of the genetic potential of crop yield is held back by abiotic stress factors.
Wow, and it varies from crop to crop and region to region as to what the most significant events are. But as one example, we were talking about the avocado industry. They have those Santa Ana winds, they've had fires. That's incredibly stressful on a high value crop. Pick any region, pick any crop, and they're going to have some degree of issues. It could be a freeze somewhere during the bloom time. I mean, it's not an endless list, but it's a very significant problem, and growers far and wide face these issues, correct?
That is correct. And one of the areas of research that's been very interesting is the indication that biotic stress, so fungal, bacterial, pest pressure, is often, if not always, preceded by some type of abiotic stress factor that predisposes the plant to being attacked. And so to the degree that we can minimize or manage or attempt to manage some of these abiotic stress factors, there are multiple downstream benefits.
How do we do that? A plant can't move. A grower might say, well, I don't know when a freeze is coming. They may have some historic belief that it could happen, but how can a grower take steps in advance to try to mitigate or alleviate some of the issues they can have with abiotic stress?
Well, that's an excellent question, and my response would revolve around the 4 key areas that Redox focuses on, 4 key solution areas. The first is soil health. If there are severe imbalances in the soil that need to be corrected or will prevent the plant from achieving its potential, those need to be considered, and they need to be realistic. And if there are things that can be done to minimize the impact of negative soil health, that's fundamental. The second is root growth and development. It doesn't matter what crop, whether it's a strawberry plant or a corn plant or commercial turf grass, the quality and quantity of the root system is very critical, and it leads directly to soil health because the root system is where one of the direct factors on soil health. So we've got to have a root system, we've got to have the soil chemical biological balance to bring those together. And then the third area we focus on is nutrient efficiency. Just understanding nutrients, how they're taken up, how they're assimilated, balance, and so on. And last but not least is abiotic stress defense. And abiotic stress defense typically revolves around a comprehensive approach to managing a crop.
When you come to the latter portion, although all four are obviously critical, and we've also been talking about nutrient optimization as well as efficiency. So a lot of changes coming, but these are fundamentals to help all crops in all situations. So with abiotic stress defense, which then would affect biotic stress, pest disease, I mean, if you can solve that or make inroads on that, you're going to help your crops immensely. Tell me about diKaP and how it helps.
Well, diKaP is a product I'm very excited to talk about because it addresses a very basic plant metabolic activity, which is respiration in the plant. So if we think about plants and how they operate, sunlight energy, they're taking sunlight energy, turning it into chemical energy. Well, that sunlight energy, along with water and carbon dioxide, forms chemical energy in the form of carbohydrates. And the way that occurs, besides basic photosynthesis, the plant needs to take in carbon dioxide. That is respiration, bringing in carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen. And so diKaP stimulates that plant for better respiration. Better respiration is more energy coming in, ultimately into the plant, which means now that plant has resources to withstand stress and so on. Now with that, what is diKaP? It's a powerful biostimulant that also includes phosphorus and potassium nutrition. Very high end, very complex, very efficient. But the key component of a diKaP is really the biostimulant technology that promotes this respiration of the plant. So how does that happen? Well, the plant is a pump, and it's regulated by the stomata and the leaves. And as you regulate those, you're pulling up more nutrients and water, you're pulling in more carbon dioxide, you're increasing the efficiency of the plant. And the exciting thing about that is that it doesn't matter if it's turf grass or a commodity crop, the benefit is the same. So when is this respiration most critical? When you have the most stress. So diKaP is one of the best materials to apply when you have a freeze or a cold event. It's also one of the best materials that can be applied for a heat event that's impacting the performance of that crop. The leaves will be cooler, the plant will regulate itself better, it will handle these stress factors wherein they do less damage to the crop. So it's so basic to plant function that's exciting and has so many applications on a variety of crops.
You travel across the country, you're flying to California right after our visit. You've seen firsthand some of the success stories. You've heard a lot as well. I know you speak with a lot of growers and agronomists. They're very excited to visit with you about our technology. So what have you seen directly and heard about the diKaP success stories?
You know, it's interesting, Jim. For many years, we didn't lift a finger to actually do background research or look at the molecular activity of diKaP on plants because it sold itself. Literally, growers or consultants would apply it. They'd say, well, I like what I see. And they would continue to use it. Now we're more informed, but it is still one of those products that is just very exciting because typically when applied at the right time, in the right opportunity, it's a product that the application has really good downstream benefits for better returns. And so from that standpoint, it's fun. It's really fun to see the product go out and see it used and seeing growers experience that benefit.
Since it has a wide range of benefits, but particularly handling abiotic stress, is there a diKaP season? Does it depend on what the grower is facing?
That's an excellent question. diKaP, by the way, the use rates usually vary between 1 and 2 pounds per acre. There are a few applications that are higher. There's a few that are lower, but those are the average use rates per acre per application. And so it's a dry microcrystal formulation that has the consistency of salt. And it's interesting that it does not matter if I apply a pound via fertigation through a center pivot or that same pound goes on through an airplane on that crop. So it's not limited by water volume. It's just getting that response into the plant. And from that standpoint, when is it going to create the greatest opportunities for return on investment? And that's an excellent question. And the way I would describe this is cell enlargement, and as your water demand curve increases. So it depends on the crop when that occurs, but if you think about that plant is needing more water, that's the perfect time for diKaP. Because diKaP, based on the research, what it does in the plant and the regulation in that plant, it'll help to optimize those activities in the plant. So depending on the crop, it can be applied a few times per season, maybe right before heat events, stress events. Other opportunities for crop, we want fruit size, color. We definitely see that in all crops where we're looking to improve color, as we'll apply it later in the season. And one of the modes of action is higher phenolic compound production. So you get a fruit that has better bricks, better size, and better color. And of course, that's all improves the return on investment.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, people often shop with their eyes, although they want to have a good dining experience once they do bite into the apple or whatever it is. So we've all been to the grocery store. We say, well, this one's obviously good because look at that vibrant color. I'm so happy to hear that diKaP helps with that. That's a real difference maker for a grower's bottom line, correct?
It is. And unfortunately, on many crops, they are sold on the visual, less so on the taste. Mm-hmm. But now consumers are getting more discerning. And so if you're producing melons or apples or cherries or strawberries that have higher soluble solids, higher sugar, they taste better, consumers come back and buy more. And so that's a huge benefit as well.
Yeah, I mean, why choose? You can have a good-looking item that also has good shelf life and tastes great. I mean, that's a win for everybody. So you talked about the biostimulant and nutrition combination that Redox delivers in a unique and incredibly effective way. This extends to our whole product line, correct? You talk about the fact that whatever a grower needs in their fields or orchards, when you have the biostimulants combined with the nutrients, that is an incredibly powerful combination.
It is, and it's been enjoyable to develop solutions that come in the form of products, where we find a need and we can fill a need in the marketplace. And our philosophy has always been, we're not going to produce something unless there's the need. If there's already technology in the marketplace is accomplishing the objectives, we don't bother with it. We focus on unique solutions where we can make a difference.
I think that plays into the main philosophy here, tell the truth, also help the growers where they're at. And I find it fascinating that less can be very effective. Some of the other items to be applied might be in very large quantities. Here we are with diKaP talking about 1 to 2 pounds per acre. That would be a real eye-opener for a grower that might be using mass quantities of something.
It is, but as we learn more and more about plant physiology, what we understand is many times our inputs are stimulatory in nature. In other words, it's wonderful that we're applying a product that has, high phosphorus, potassium value, but understanding what it's doing in the plant, it's actually stimulating that plant to assimilate more potassium and phosphorus. So when we think of it, 1 to 2 pounds in the whole scheme of things seems like nothing. Well, it is nothing, but we need to kind of redirect our thoughts towards, we are stimulating a plant, and when we have a balanced soil and soil health and where irrigation is present, that's proper, putting it all together, now we can use this tool to raise the bar.
I'm going to open an area up that is very exciting, and we could talk about it forever, but I'd love your opinion on the importance of plant charge balance.
Well, it is an important area, and just the background behind that is all nutrients, almost all nutrients are in electrical form when they're taken up into the plant. They have an electrical charge. So we've looked at, we know about soil electroconductivity, we know about pH, but for years we've overlooked what exactly is happening in the plant. Well, as it turns out, the plant must achieve a 50-50 balance of negative and positively charged ions. It can't not balance itself. So when there are factors driving elements with a negative charge uptake in the plant, like nitrate nitrogen, the plant is forced to spend a lot of energy achieving balance. And that energy, trying to pull up enough potassium, for example, to balance that negative charge, comes at a cost. So to the extent that our products can help the plant achieve that balance, means we can allocate energy for the crop we're trying to sell. So it's a very important component to plant physiology, and the exciting thing is we're able to measure this. We are collaborating on technology where we can identify how inputs impact this charge balance and how we can impact that to achieve this homeostasis in the plant, wherein this plant charge balance is at an optimum, where the plant has the best energy potential for that crop.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It is not theoretical. It is sound science, and we can measure it. And I think we're going to get a lot smarter. We have a lot of testing going on with the Sensine company right now, and I think that that's going to yield terrific results, even more terrific results in the coming years. So let's talk about this area of sustainability. There are often different definitions of it. I believe it's very important, if you want sustainability in agriculture, to make sure that there is reasonable profitability for the growers and also environmental sensitivity as well. Our products work extremely well in that area. What is your definition of sustainability, and how important do you feel it will be in agriculture moving forward?
Well, sustainability often takes on different perspectives. If you're a grower, you said, well, I want to stay in business. And to stay in business, I got to produce a profit. But there are environmental aspects to sustainability as well. And the truth is that the evidence is widespread that agriculture needs to change and adapt. American agriculture, world agriculture has been amazing at feeding the planet. And so as we look at the strides that are made between genetics and technology since World War II, the yield averages are incredible. But the truth is, on most commodity crops, we have peaked out. We're not producing more. In fact, in some crops, there's just a very slow decline. So we face a scenario where we need to be sustainably, economically, we need to feed the world, but we also need to take care of the planet. Well, it does not make sense if, for example, 2/3 of our nitrogen fertilizer is lost to the atmosphere or to leaching. And that is what the data is showing, that about 33% of applied conventional nitrogen actually gets into the plant. This is based on both some research in California as well as some studies in the Midwest. Well, if you look at that, nitrous oxide has over 300 times the greenhouse gas potency of carbon dioxide. So that's a clear area we need to do a better job. And across the country, we're seeing where, okay, yeah, our groundwater has too much nitrate and nitrogen, we got to do something about it. So growers and organizations are focused on this. Phosphorus nutrition, far too inefficient, and we can do better. So combining stewardship as well as the economic aspect of it, to me, is the most exciting, where we can not only be more efficient, be more sustainable, but more economically viable altogether. That's the ideal scenario.
One quick comment on nitrogen. Our product RDXN is excellent. It was a decade in development. That will help significantly. It is helping significantly with nitrogen optimization. So that's a story to be told. We can spend time at another episode, but it's very, very exciting technology. Another beneficiary of the approach that you just mentioned, that we are definitely heading in that path, is the consumer. We need to have healthier food, and growers can definitely do it. And there's more incentive for the consumer to eat these items because it's going to be tastier as well. The better you treat that plant, the better off the materials are that it's going to be produced. I think it's very exciting. I want to ask you, are you optimistic for the future? What do you see for the next few years in terms of continued breakthrough and our ability to help the grower?
Well, I am optimistic, but I'm also realistic. And we look at the stark reality of farm income reduction since 2022. It's down severely while expenses are at record highs. What I will say is there's very little room for mediocre. There's very little room for average. So if you're an average grower, average production, average quality, I think it's going to be a struggle. There is room for those that want improved performance, improved quality, production, lowest cost per unit production, where they might be spending more per acre, but their cost per unit is the lowest because their yields and quality are what the market will accept. So I'm very excited to look at the future and see that changes on the horizon. I think growers in general are highly motivated, and most realize doing the way I've been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years is probably not going to help me get to that above average production.
I'm glad we can help them get there. And John, it was so nice to visit with you. Thanks for your time.
Of course.
And that will wrap up this edition of the Redox Grows Technical Podcast. Thanks for joining us.